running of the meeting, so we will start with roll call
Chair Swaga,
here.
Councilwoman Bybee,
Here.
Mr. J. And Mr. East.
Here. All right, thank you. Actually, welcome, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate you serving, taking Rick's place, and so we've got a full seat. and-
Big shoes to fill, Reese, big shoes.
Yeah.
Glad to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, thanks, John. And we'll get, I know Richard on the line. Charlene, thanks for joining virtually. I know you've got a hard stop in about 55 minutes. Which actually is kind of tees up for the approval of the agenda. If everybody's okay with it, I would like to take E4, which is really focuses more on the presentation, discussion and direction regarding the budget for fiscal year 25-26. That way we're not getting cut short. I know I'm gonna shoot for kind of a hard stop around 11 so you can do the agency of record meeting. So if everybody's in favor of that, I'll take a motion.
So real quick before we do the motion, let's just.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any, hey, Richard?
Apologies for being late.
Any public comment?
No public comment at this time.
Thanks, Ben, appreciate it. All right, we'll move to approval of the minutes with the change of moving E4 up to the first topic.
So
I'll make a motion.
approval of the agenda, moving E4 to
Sorry,
first.
did I say minutes? All right, approval of the approval of the agenda with the note of moving E4 up first on the list.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to approval of the minutes. So, looking at the approval of the minutes of finance facilities committee from October 24th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Move to accept as presented.
John, yeah, John was here. I'll second it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Charlene, and no, Mr. Reeves is abstaining. We'll move to item E, any committee matters. And E, so we'll take E4, move it to E1, and we'll jump right into the budget discussion.
Yeah, sounds good. Give me one moment
Thanks,
to
Courtney.
start up. So it's probably need 2 minutes for me to get everything set up.
Okay. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, I think to stay on the rails. The issue is we have to call from public comment before we go to anything.
It's there, so I'll take part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Where are you, Richard?
Oh, good.
Good.
This is my third meeting already.
Your third meeting, Mr. Check?
Yeah, I started at 6:30 meeting.
Oh,
Zoom at 8:30. Now this one, a new meeting. Today is one of those days.
It's going to follow. And it's not be the PowerPoint. It's pretty similar to what's already in the binder, but it's a good visual aid and some charts.
Thank you. Thank you.
This one's straight.
Sorry. Empty water.
I know Courtney's getting said, but Mike, well, as this rolls out, do you want us to kind of hold questions? Do you want us to kind of stop and just discuss as
I
we
think it's
go?
okay to ask questions during, because I think that there's so much information that
Right.
I don't want to maybe get lost, right? So I think Courtney's okay with that.
Oh, yeah, you can stop and ask
Yeah.
questions anytime.
Is there any limit on the number of questions we can ask?
No limit, you get unlimited questions. Yeah, feel free to stop anytime, because I'll move at a good pace, so you're welcome to stop at any time. Like, he's just getting us set up.
What we'll do too, if you guys, if somebody's okay with it, is things that are significant changes to the budget. If it impacts certain areas, maybe we'll jump in and just make sure that the committee understands that we made that change and why,
Yeah,
in case you don't catch it.
that'd
We
be
try
great.
and make sure that, yeah.
Oh, okay. Slideshow, and then put it down. Apologies, I would have had it plugged in already if I might be going first, so thanks for your patience.
How are you, sir? Your son's, boss is gonna run for attorney general. Good.
Let's go.
Okay, thanks, Courtney.
Yeah, so good morning, Courtney Jager, Vice President of Finance. So the purpose of this agenda item is to review the proposed fiscal year 26 budget. And as a reminder, approval from the committee today is advisory only. The budget won't be approved until it's adopted by the Board of Directors at the next meeting. So I wanted to start off this presentation with an overall summary of some of the key objectives in the budget this year. So first, I want to talk about some of our cost saving strategies. You'll see later in the presentation that tax revenues are down about 3.6%. So we went into this budget with some cost cutting strategies, not only to offset those reduced revenues, but to offset some of the fixed increases in costs that we're going to see with the mandated increase in PERS. So the first initiative that we
One second,
implemented.
hey Charlene, are you muted? Thank you. Sorry, Courtney.
No worries, thank you. So the first change that we implemented was we moved the effective date of the merit program from September 1st to November 1st. And we did this so we can incorporate Q1 performance results into any merit decisions. If we find that Q1 is underperforming, more impacted by economic conditions than we had anticipated, then we might reduce the merit program percentages or end up eliminating it altogether. So that's why we moved that date to November 1st.
So do you run a merit grid typically where for different evaluation scores, you're giving different percentages?
We do. So based on the evaluations, employees receive 0 to 3%. That's based on job performance throughout the year.
So is this now a 15-month period that we're looking at, or if my math is right, September, October, October, so a 14-month period that we're looking at?
So we base it typically based on the previous fiscal year, even though it's a little delayed in when we implement the date. So if you've been employed a certain number of months through June 30th of the previous fiscal year, then we end up doing that. That also gives the supervisors a period to complete the evaluations as well.
Sure. Okay, but you're not talking about if by moving it to November, I got two questions. First is in moving it to November, are we now giving the employees 117% or whatever it is? Okay, so it's the same, so we're just kicking it down the road by 2 months.
Exactly, yeah.
would not be
So
retroactive.
3% as of September 1st, you'll get that same 3% as of November 1st. We're not going to, yep, and so that does reduce a little bit too as well. That was a small budget savings.
And then is your plan to make this annual, this is now the new annual date is November 1, or do you see us moving it back to September in future years?
We'd like to move it earlier in future years. Performance results allowed. We'd like to move it closer to the June 30th date and not push it out quite as far.
Okay, so if we do that, then in future years, then we'll see the impact, I would think, earlier in next fiscal year. Is that
Absolutely.
correct?
This year it was a bit of a cost savings pushing it back, but if we find ourselves in a stronger financial position in terms of projected revenues, then we'd like to push that back a bit higher to align closer to the June 30th.
It's kind of like a one-off thing, and then each will be subject to how the economic forecast looks.
Yeah, and we took a lot of proactive measures, and we're going through those first kind of as an overall guiding discussion for the budget. These are some of our one-time measures to save costs in the current fiscal year, because not only do we have some reduced revenues, but we do see some increased fixed costs too. So we had to make some offsets this year. So the next current initiative to save for cost savings that we implemented is a targeted hiring freeze. So positions that become vacant after July 1st, won't automatically be posted to be filled. They're going to require departmental justification and then approval from the CEO. So this isn't applicable to positions we're trying to fill right now that might end up filled after June 30th. But this is new positions where if somebody voluntarily resigns or is terminated, we're not going to just automatically post that. It's gonna be a discussion so we can reorganize as needed and see if we can have operational efficiencies, really look at what position they're doing, and where the needs are in the organization at the time.
What's our FTE count?
Mike, were you able to grab that from HR?
I believe it was 150.
158, yeah, 158, we just recently had like two more, so it's
Okay,
156.
yes.
And if we look at that compared to previous periods, prior years, 158, is that?
So we're actually running that right now. Unfortunately, Paycom, which we use, has had some glitches in its software, so we're literally having to do it manually. But we're gonna do a 4-year comparison of FTEs, not only by the organization, but by department.
Great.
So just to add to Courtney's point, if a position is vacated in a specific area of the organization, we will not just automatically backfill that position in that department. We will look at the organization as a whole and determine where the needs are, so that an FTE count may remain flat, but we may decide to allocate that position in an area of need versus just putting it because that was where it was vacated from.
Does that FTE count pretty closely match the head count? I'm assuming FTEs is at 30 or 40 hours, whatever you consider to be a full-time equivalent.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Lori?
Right, well, the FTEs are being calculated, but so many part-time employees that it's,
So it's probably a 200 head count or 175. I'm making it up, but it's a bigger number. There's a point.
With temporary, yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Thanks.
And we can get you those numbers once we're able to effectively run the reports.
And we treat temporary different than part-time, right? Two different. So FTE's part-time and the temp agency we use.
Correct.
And we do budget for temp labor under a separate line item,
Yeah.
that's separate from our salaries and wages and benefits, so you'll
Yeah.
see that broken out later in the presentation.
Great.
All right, so next is a change in our cost of living adjustments. So the previous CEO had implemented cost of living adjustments and applied those uniformly throughout the organization. So the CEO, all the way down to the staff level, were receiving the same percentages. Last year, we changed that. We eliminated COLAs for senior directors and above. And this year, we're only applying COLAs to employees at the manager level and below, because those are the employees most affected by inflation. We'll go over the details of those numbers a little later in the presentation. That's another cost saving initiative that we implemented. Next is our discretionary spending reductions. So at the beginning of the budget process, we went through each department's budget and calculated what their discretionary spending was. So that didn't include salaries and wages, like certain fixed costs like building rent, things like that. So we calculated what department's discretionary spending was, and then we asked them to make cuts of up to 8%. Per CEO discretion, we did go back and revise that. So the sales department is between a 5 to 6% cut. The marketing department does not have any cuts in their discretionary spending, and the remaining departments have the 8% cuts in discretionary spending. And that's not just to decrease the, to match the decreases in revenues, but again, we really had to offset some of our fixed costs. Nevada PERS mandated an increase in contributions, so we really needed departments to make some cuts so we could avoid things like layoffs and other drastic measures.
What was the PERS increase?
So PERS went from 33.5 to 36.75,
33.
which is the largest increase they've had in several years. So it was important for departments to be willing to make cuts so we could, accommodate those increases, and we do appreciate the departments that need those cuts. So next is a reduction of the air service fund. So per previous board discussion, the air service fund can be up to $3 million. We decided to reduce that to 1.75 this year. We've had really low spending from air service the last 2 years. This year, we're spending about 200,000. In the previous fiscal year, we spent 347. So we're making a temporary reduction, and that's just to accommodate expenses in other areas of the organization. And if we do find that performance exceeds in Q1, Q2, and so forth, that's going to be one of our highest priority areas to replenish. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit too about our potential future initiatives. I mean, obviously there's a lot of economic uncertainty. There's a high likelihood of a recession. So to be proactive, we've come up with a few approaches. So the first one is potential departmental reductions. So each department was directed to develop a 5% cost reduction plan for fiscal 26. We want to have this ready to implement if we do see that revenues are underperforming due to economic conditions. And I am going to require that each department updates this plan on a quarterly basis. We want to make sure we're working with the most recent information. You know, your plan going into Q1 is going to look a lot different than your plan going into Q2 and so forth. So I will have departments updating this quarterly so we have it ready to go. And this also is going to be helpful because if organizational priorities shift as we finalize the strategic plan, we'll be able to move funds quickly and accordingly. And then again, merits, again, part of our plan is to evaluate that after Q1 and either make reductions or eliminate it if needed. And the next is the bonus program. So bonuses aren't paid until after June 30th. So this is an area we're also going to keep an eye on. We still want to have employees go through the goal setting process. Last year, we implemented a stricter quantitative goal setting process, and we found that this has been really effective in driving employee performance and accountability. So we're going to have our employees go forward with the goal setting process as is. We budgeted for bonuses as is, but we are going to keep this flexible and evaluate as organizational performance continues throughout the year. So right now, no changes to the goal setting framework for goals bonuses or the sales incentive bonuses, but if we need to make modifications to the payouts, that'll be evaluated late in the fiscal year. So here's just a quick budget overview.
Courtney, real quick, sorry.
Yeah.
So will we be dependent on fiscal status that we're at? Are we still going to be looking at merit or not merit, bonus? Are we looking at bonus? Even though we're trying to do all this cost cutting, will that be a decision depending on where we are?
Yeah, so a little later in the presentation, I'll go into the details of what makes up salaries and wages for the organization. We do have the full amounts budgeted, but again, as part of our future initiatives, that's an area that we're going to evaluate and pull from as we evaluate performance throughout the fiscal year. So if we find that we're performing on target or even above target, that's an area that we can keep the same in the budget. If we find that, you know, we need to implement some of those additional cost saving measures, bonuses are an area we look at.
Okay, and I support merit is different than the bonus, and bonus in lieu of layoffs and other critical cost savings. I would support, you know, looking at merit and bonus below that because it's hard to justify bonus if you're freezing positions or you're laying people off. So that's all my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll go over to this in a large amount of detail with comparisons to prior periods, but just wanted to give an overview of the budget. Right now, net revenues minus expenses are at a loss of 1.1 million. We do feel comfortable with that number because each year we have a significant carry forward in our budget from prior periods. You'll see this year that's at about 6.9 million. We usually don't end up spending the entirety of air service. We don't anticipate that we'll spend the entirety of the event development. So we're fine with this slight difference going into this budget period. We usually do have a slight difference between revenues and expenses, and that's offset by the carry forward in the next year.
And so carry forward is expenses that we have yet to exhaust, right? That
Exactly.
change the bottom line.
Yeah, and I have a breakdown a little later in the presentation, but this year, for example, we budgeted 3 million for air service. We've only spent 200,000. So that leaves us with $2.8 million to carry forward in the next year. We didn't spend 500,000 of our event development fund. That rolls forward. We did a detailed analysis of expenses that'll come in under budget due to vacant positions, things like that. So that's just essentially everything we have resources right now that we'll have at year end we can use towards next year.
I noticed carry forward in capital, and I wasn't sure what the accounting treatment of what that was.
Yeah, so basically, we can treat the budget for operating and for capital a little differently. So the capital fund accumulates resources for projects, and those projects sometimes span multiple years. So each year we do an assessment of which projects are outstanding, how much is left to complete them. So we make sure we don't have an excess of funds in the capital fund, and also making sure we have enough money in the capital fund to complete all projects that were in the works. So you'll see when Chad does this presentation a little later, we have projects in that carry forward from like 2013 that we had to put on hold that we evaluated are still a priority. We're budgeted back then, so the money's in the capital fund to complete those.
Okay, so it just sits in a CIP until is that what it does?
Yeah, so for governmental accounting, we actually have to keep separate funds. And so what we're looking at right now is the general fund and the expenditures from there. That's where all room tax collections, facilities revenues are accumulated. The capital fund is only supported by transfers from the general fund. So if in a given year we budget 4 million for capital, we'll transfer 4 million. That can accumulate with what we have from prior periods. So we reconcile that each year to say, okay, did we eliminate any projects? Do we have too much money in the capital fund? Do we have not enough? And so we factor that reconciliation into our carry forward amounts here.
So, and I'm probably missed this, so in that 6.9 number, CapEx is not in there.
That's not, capital fund is a standalone
Yeah,
fund, and that's
gotcha.
just fully funded on its own from transfers. This is just operating.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, and it's definitely a little confusing because the treatment of the general fund and the capital fund is a little different.
Okay.
Alright, so next we'll go through our strategic plan financial policies. So right now, we're in the process of developing a new strategic plan, but we're far enough along in the process where we don't anticipate any significant changes to the financial policies. So we're using the financial policies from the previous strategic plan to guide this budget. So the first policy is related to general fund reserves. So we strive for an unassigned general fund balance of about 17% of operating expenses. This is for cash flow purposes. Obviously, each month, you know, the revenues that come in don't exactly match the expenses that go out. So we have to have some cash flow for stabilization and to meet our obligations. And the next again is the capital fund. So per board policies, we dedicate up to 10% of room tax collections towards capital expenses. This year we've dedicated 9.6% for capital. And then capital reserves, we do retain additional funds in the capital fund for critical maintenance issues. So we have obviously old aging facilities. If we had something fail that would drastically impact client service or safety, we would draw from those reserves to pay those types of expenses. So that's kind of like a rainy day fund within the capital fund. So then next, speaking of the rainy day fund for the board can be up to $2 million. That's what we have in there right now, and that's what we plan to maintain through fiscal year 26. We do not dip into those funds without advising the board.
That is part of the carry forward the previous year, is it an operating?
Nope, that is completely separate because we don't allocate that towards our operating expenses. That is just basically a separate savings account, if you kind of want to think of it like that, so we could dip into at the board's discretion, and that's just for organizational stability.
Okay, I don't wanna get too much in the weeds, but do we have those in some sort of laddered CD? Where do you put that money?
Yeah, so we have them with the local government investment pool, and we have a pretty good rate of return right now. We've seen good investment income on that. All of our majority of our cash actually we keep in the local government investment pool. We only transfer what we need for operating to maximize our investment income.
And you can access that.
Really easily, yeah, so it's unlike a CD or things like that where the money's locked in, it provides us a flexible option, but with good rates of returns competitively.
And it's extremely conservative because we're working with governmental money, so there's gonna be no risk of principal.
Yeah, and per NRS too, you know, we're prohibited from engaging in riskier investments, so we look for the best thing that we can do while still keeping the funds safe.
Yeah, and our advisors do a really good job of keeping, you know, safety and principle first and foremost.
Absolutely. Alright, so next are the strategic plan financial policy related to board initiatives. So like we mentioned, the board has allowed us to budget up to $3 million for air service, and we're going with 1.75 this year due to low expenditures in the last 2 fiscal years. Then next is special event funding / event development. So in the last strategic plan, the board donated 1 million for special event funding annually. So we still have that 1 million. $500,000 is available through the special event marketing sponsorship program. The other $500,000 is through the special event opportunity fund. This year, we've added $1 million to event development to support the RSCBA's role as the at-risk promoter of events. This was approved by the board in January 25. We don't anticipate we'll spend that entire $1 million, but since we are now in an at-risk role, we do need to have cash on hand in case we, you know, end up on the losing side of risk on some of those concerts and other events. All right, so next to talk a little bit more about the revenues that will fund this budget through the general fund. So here we have a breakdown of what we're budgeting for fiscal year 26 and what projections are looking for, that would say 24, 25. But you'll see there's really no change in the composition, just slight decreases in some of the amounts. And so the first one we'll look at in detail is room tax collections. So like I mentioned, we're estimating that room tax will be 3.6% below the prior year. And overall, this is pretty conservative considering that we have the USBC open coming in, which generates a significant amount of cash room nights. So we feel pretty good about these projections based on current economic conditions and likelihood of a possible recession. So here are the breakdown of room tax statistics. We're anticipating that the average rate will go down compared to what we budgeted in the previous year. That's just what we've seen based on current trends. We do have cash room nights up, and that is mainly due to the USDC Open. And again,
What's the timeline? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What's the time frame on that again?
For the open championship, mid-February to July.
I struggled with the rate. I mean, when I was going through it, I felt like it had been, I felt like it was really conservative. So can you talk a little bit, I mean, just looking at, I know we say budget 24, 25, but I assume that's either a stub, either a 9-3 split or it's some kind of, an estimate of the full year.
yeah, and I'll pull up rooms by market segment, kind of just show where we landed for each one. Hotel, we have the most significant decrease, because that is where we're seeing the biggest fluctuations. And that's where we're seeing the biggest hits on the months that we've been down or a little bit below our projections. So we're just not seeing enough assurance that those rates will hold up. So we decided to err more on the conservative side. Also slight dip in vacation rentals. Those have been increasing year to year, and we're starting to see a bit more fluctuation with those, especially given more available inventory and competition in that area. So we do expect a drop off in that as well. And then even, just keeping an eye on room nights, they are our room rates per night. We are definitely seeing drops in those midweek too. So that was all factored into the offset that primarily hits hotels.
Okay.
We'll go back through a little bit more on what we're looking at through market segment. Again, no big shifts in how we see room tax being allocated between the different segments. We are predicting overall decreases. We have a slight increase for vacation rentals. Even with that rate dipping a bit, we do continue to see those trend upward. That's been a pretty consistent trend over the last few years. It's people looking at that as an option versus traditional hotels. Then occupied rooms, again, overall, those are up a bit, primarily due to the USDC tournament. No substantial shifts in the market segment mix overall, though. So next, we're going to look at facilities revenues. So a little later in this meeting, Aramark's going to present the food and beverage revenues. Aramark is contracted to prepare that budget and manage those revenues, and they'll be providing a separate presentation. But for facilities rentals and other revenues, those are prepared by the executive director that oversees venue sales. And the way these are prepared is they look at actual bookings and anticipated bookings, and then also put a goal for basically what they want to achieve on top of that in the next fiscal year. So these were reviewed with the CEO in detail and approved, and basically reflect those projections. If there's any detailed questions on those, we can go over that as well. I also wanted to provide the committee with a summary of facilities losses over the last several years. So for the budget year, there were some essentially aggressive predictions when it came to facilities expenses. So the facilities expenses were developed with the previous VP who retired shortly after this budget was implemented. He had some more aggressive ideas related to reducing temporary labor, repairs and maintenance. Those didn't quite come to fruition. So that's where we're seeing the majority of the increases that are causing projected expenses for fiscal year 25 to come in over budget, as well as contracted security. And that's a contract that is up to be evaluated in the next year as well. So the new executive director of venue operations is going to be looking at some cost saving strategies specifically in those areas and in the overall budget. But we are right now expecting that expenses will be over budget. And then for facilities revenues, you can see that those are under budget as well. The majority of that right now through March is attributed to Aramark. Aramark budgeted to remit $1 million in net profit to the RSCBA, and right now they're sitting at a $20,000 net loss. So that is made up the majority of our difference in facilities revenues, along with fewer concerts at the REC than projected. For the current fiscal year, so you'll see that the National Bowling Stadium revenues are higher than the previous years, and that's because of the open tournament. The Reno Event Center, we have budgeted to get 6 concerts into the Reno Event Center. That is managed by the Director of Operations of the Reno Event Center, so that's why those revenues are a bit higher as well. And then the Convention Center and Livestock Event Center are based on projected and actual bookings.
When we budgeted, just out of an abundance of caution, the facilities losses here, did we do that with the understanding that we would or would not receive the money from the city of Reno next year?
We did, so in other revenues, I have included the funds from the city of Reno, because as of today, they are contractually still obligated to
Sure.
pay those to us. If there is a decision made by the board to modify that contract, then we might look into some of those cost saving strategies we have had the other departments prepare to offset that.
What was that, 350 something?
Yeah, it'll be around 350.
That's a good question.
Right, yeah, and that actually brings us to other revenues. So other revenues is where those fees are budgeted. This is a very small portion of our revenue, but includes those administrative fees, certain other administrative fees. This year it includes USDC hotel rebates. And it also includes revenues generated by the individual departments. The biggest change this year is the subsidy credit from the American Bus Association of $320,000. And that's directly offsetting a portion of the $380,000 in expenses budgeted for that convention. This also is where we budget our investment income.
Is that January of 20? Yeah.
All right, and then carry forward, we already discussed this in detail, but again, this is just the available resources from items we have not spent in the current year. And this is usually a large number because we have to have funds on hand for things like air service and event development, but if we don't spend it, we need to move it forward to the next period. All right, so next we'll look in detail at general fund expenses. So I have two different ways we look at expenses here. So by department and by category. Our two largest departments are facilities and marketing. Our two largest categories are payroll and services and supplies. So we'll go into each of these by detail and by category with 2-year trends on the next slides. So here we have salaries and wages and benefits by department. We can go into more of the explanations of what's driving those numbers. So for staffing, the budget reflects the elimination of one position, and this was a position that was originally budgeted in fiscal year 25, but just not utilized. We've also left one key position vacant for 6 months. These adjustments more than offset the addition of one new position that we're adding tied to succession planning. And staffing levels at the facilities, those will continue to remain flexible to respond to business demand. Often at the facilities, if we have a part-time position leave, we evaluate whether or not that needs to be converted to full-time or vice versa. So really anything below the manager level, we do keep pretty flexible based on business needs. And then so again, cost of living adjustments, like I discussed previously, the previous CEO implemented cost of living adjustments for all employees uniformly. In the last year, we changed that to director and below. This year, it'll now just be for manager and below. From last March to this March, inflation is around 2.3% for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So we are recommending a COLA to address inflation, especially because again, the managers, supervisors, and staff are most heavily impacted by inflation. So we're anticipating we would have saved around $114,000 by implementing this tiered COLA approach rather than if we had applied it uniformly throughout the organization. So next is the bonus program. Wanted to go into a little more detail about that. So for the last several years.
Sorry, can we step back to payroll? Can we?
Yeah.
If we go to the previous page where we show actuals and so talk through a little bit with G&A, right? G&A is going up 20%.
Yeah, and so a lot of that is actually because that's where we budget staff training. So staff training, certain allowances that are given to employees for safety glasses or boots. So that is going up, not in relation to staffing, but in relation to benefits provided to staff.
20%.
Yeah, and so that also includes like our required sexual harassment training, which we haven't had for the last several years, and other training opportunities. So really, we've been really low on training costs the last several years. So that's where those are incorporated as well.
Okay, so you're saying that's the training for the 156 FTEs, it's all FTEs, so we spread that, whatever that is, $400,000, right, over, I mean, it just feels like a lot if you look at it on a per employee basis.
Yeah, and so a portion of that is related to, so like you'll see the actual 23-24, our benefits were a bit lower, and that's due
I
to
discounted that, I was really just looking at the projected is where I see the 20%, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and that's so for the current year. In the previous year, we had a significant amount of vacancies. So for example, like in our HR department, we now have 3 staff versus not even having both positions filled in the prior year. And so that's where some of that's coming from as well. So basically bumping up benefits provided to staff and then bumping up staffing.
Courtney, does that include the safety manager, the safety program?
Yeah,
all
the
of
safety manager actually was just reclassed to GNA. They used to be charged in facilities, but now they're under GNA, so that was one change.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's part of that change from 24 to 25 is that the safety manager and all of their related benefits and their programs are now being charged to GNA instead of facilities because they're under HR.
And a lot of that has to do with OSHA compliance
Yeah.
and all that mandatory components.
Right.
Yeah, so some of that is just a reclassification in the expense because we moved the employee to a different department.
And Laura, a lot of those mandated ones have increased in what we're required to do now, I mean, a lot of it through OSHA, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've done boot programs that are required by OSHA. We've done an enormous amount of training, which can be costly because we're getting external trainers. Right now, we just hired a new safety manager that is certified in OSHA 10 and OSHA 30. So we may eventually see some of those costs go down, but it was necessary to build up our safety
So
program.
we're kind of catch up to a certain.
Absolutely, yes, 100%.
Yeah, so between reclassifying those expenses from the facilities to GNA and paying catch up, that does account for a big chunk of the increase. Right, so back to bonus program, so again, we have budgeted to pay goals-based bonuses and incentive-based bonuses, but this is something that will be flexible based on organizational results, but right now, no changes planned. Again, we've already run through the merit program and how that works. The last is the increase in the Nevada HERS employer contribution rate. This is a mandatory increase from 33.5 to 36.75. So next is promotions and advertising. So marketing makes up 86% of this total budget. So we do have a comparison from year to year. There were no cuts made in this area as discussed earlier, but it depends on the level of detail that the committee would like to go to regarding this area. If there's questions on specific line items, we can go into that. We'll just kind of let the committee drive the discussion.
When we talk about budget of fiscal year 24-25, again, is that actually is it a 9-3 split, or is that truly the budget that we had?
So this is the budget that we had for fiscal year 25, our original budget.
What did we spend this year, or what are we estimated to spend this year?
We're estimating to come in pretty close, so I didn't update that one to projected. For salaries and wages, I did update that to a projected number because we did have a lot of vacancies this year and I wanted that to be a little more accurate as to actual, but we are predicting major changes just based on looking through results through Q3.
Okay.
So we just kept the budgeted number in there.
I don't object to the increase. I guess if we look at, the marketing dollar spent for revenue dollar is going to go up because we're budgeting revenue down. But that was. What we do.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next portion of the promotions and advertising budget. So we budget 200,000 towards unsolicited proposals. This is the change this year is that for unsolicited proposals over 10,000 that are brought to the finance committee and the board, we had budgeted those at $300,000 last year. This year, we're only budgeting those at 150. That's a cut we made to allocate resources in other areas. If we do find again that performance results are exceeding budget, we can consider replenishing this. But so something we felt was a better decision to temporarily lower in this next year.
And if I could just add some comment to that, just for everybody's understanding, is we evaluated the number of requests we received for requests below 10,000, which obviously that is decided at the senior staff level out of that 50,000 allocation. The additional funds that were anything over 10,000, that if it got through senior staff, that would then come to the finance, then go to the board as an agenda item, they were few and far between. And we didn't want to see a repeat performance of, we had funds available, we're getting into the latter part of the fiscal year. People want to utilize those funds, they want to allocate those funds. So we truly want the budget to represent the funds that are being requested over the course of the entire year, not just sitting with an abundance of availability with 60 days left in the fiscal year.
Right, on that, we've had for the last 2 years discussion with funding of TARPA and Tahoe. And it seems like kind of to your point, come to the end. What are we expecting? And, I know I won't be on the board next year. I have 2 months left, but still, I think it's a prudent question is, are we expecting that request to come back in? What's,
We don't know that sitting here today. Obviously, we did not, put any monies in the budget allocated towards TARP, for this next fiscal year. We're not recommending to. Obviously, the board is gonna make that decision at the end of the day next week, but we did not put monies in the budget, to support TARP.
and we did get that $125,000 back from RTC, correct?
Verbal, I don't believe we've received the money as of yet, correct,
We
Courtney?
have not now.
Is there any follow-up we can do? I mean, is there, is
We
this a
follow up.
standard time
We follow up.
delay?
Consistently, there is, yes.
It's a really good question. What line item does that hit in, this target? And as we think about what the budget is for that line item versus what we spent this year, should we, if we go to that, are we gonna see that it's down by that TARP Connect money? Less the subsidy we received, or is it flat?
I'm sorry if I understand the question. So,
Yeah, so where we pulled the TARP
yes,
money from,
yes.
if we look at that, what's budgeted in that line item for 25-26, will we see that it is down? It's budgeted down because
Yeah, so that's a reduction, in the unsolicited policy. We dropped that from 300 to 150. Yeah.
okay. All right, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, so if the committee agrees with our recommendation, that is what we will bring forward to the board, is budget 50 for those proposals under 10,000 and 150 for the proposals that are over 10,000. Alright, so again, we've covered air service in detail, but just a reminder, this year we're only anticipating to spend 200,000, and then we spent 347 in the next fiscal year, and we'll have 1.75 available for the next year.
And just to add some context to that, especially for Mr. J, who represents the airport. So if the community members, we targeted a $3 million number, and when we did the budget last year, and that was in partnership with the funds that were gonna be allocated towards RAS to get an overall number of $5 million in availability for the consultants, airports consultants recommendation based on MRG opportunities. What we've learned over the course of the year, the MRG opportunities are few and far between. And even those that possibly come to the level of presenting it, whether we wanted to participate or not, making the decision to move forward is obviously requires several people getting involved in the approval process to allocate that kind of money. When we really looked at where our monies were being allocated, it was more towards marketing, either supporting existing routes, supporting new routes, or supporting routes that were struggling. And then also in-market events where we bring airline scheduling decision makers to the region, or when we go to the actually hub of where the airlines are located. And for instance, an example, in September, we're going to Chicago, doing a large event with United. That's what we felt was better use of those funds. And clearly we were not, to Courtney's point, spending nearly the $3 million. So based on the reduction of 3.6%, based on increases in other expenses like PERS, we felt this was a line item that we could safely reduce, be comfortable moving forward with the 1.75.
That makes sense, because I think we're seeing, there's a lot of uncertainty in front of us now. Granted, the likelihood of a recession from last week to this week has decreased dramatically, but still there's that looming big R out there. Also, we're seeing, reduction in the amount of travel out there. So I think it's prudent for us just to be very fiscally prudent. And, we can always, augment our budget 6 months in if we see changes more to our benefit. You're shaking your
Oh, yeah.
head. So, I like the idea of, being able to augment the budget based on the current conditions. And hopefully we come back and say, hey, things aren't as bad as what we thought, so we're able to do this rather than saying, hey, it's a lot worse and we need to cut even more. So I like this strategy.
Sounds good.
Alright, so moving on to the next item, supplies and services. So the majority of supplies and services for the organization are through the facilities. We do have a breakdown on here of the total. Facilities have a lot of fixed costs that we really don't have a lot of flexibility in reducing, such as utilities. We've done projects over the last several years, such as LED lighting retrofits and things to try to reduce those utilities costs, but we keep seeing those being offset by continuous rate increases in utilities. So we don't have a ton of flexibility there, cuts. And then also the USB-C open tournament drives up utilities costs because of operating that building for longer hours. The next highest item for the facilities under supplies and services is contracted services, security, and other. Again, we are going to evaluate our security contract just to make sure that those costs are being monitored as closely as possible, because that's an area where we've seen consistent increases each year. Next, as we talked about a little earlier, is contracted labor. The previous VP in developing the prior budget had anticipated cutting contracted labor for some of the additional positions that were brought on, both full-time and part-time. So that's another area that Chad's going to look at this year to really make sure we're effectively utilizing contracted labor and looking at different shifts, areas we can cut, things like that. He has a really good plan going into next year. And then our general and administrative costs, those are just various supplies and contracts to support the organization. Repairs and maintenance, we have aging facilities. We're limited really in the cuts that we can make there. I mean, we can go into the budget year with an aggressive budget and, you know, end up with something that fails unexpectedly and have an issue. So we're really not trying to be too aggressive this year with those projections, just knowing that we have aging facilities, especially a facility that's going to be getting more use this year, which is the Foley Stadium. And then supplies and other, that's been impacted by inflation year to year, that those are being reduced as possible for, not for any discretionary expenses. So again, we covered really where the majority of the services and supplies costs, and that's facilities. Under general and administrative, our biggest line item is our general liability insurance. We are budgeting for a 20% increase this year. In the current year for our renewal, we're having one of the best renewals we've seen in years. We're only looking at up to a 7% increase. So again, we're hoping that's a bit of an aggressive budget, budgeting up to 20%. But in the last several years, we've seen increases up to 35%. And we're just really subject to the volatility of the insurance market. So we want to make sure we have enough money. And if we find that comes in under budget, we can reallocate that later. Our information technology, that really just includes licensing, various contractual costs for cybersecurity and other IT areas. Those are budgeted at $502,000. We have legal fees budgeted under this line item. That's retainers and the legal contingency if the organization needs fees outside of our retainer. This is also where we budget safety supplies and then other small contractual costs.
When will the liability insurance number come in?
So for this current year, that'll be in June. It'll either be on the June agenda or the July agenda, but this is for the next fiscal year and we don't have that renewal finalized until next June or July.
Sure.
So this is a 20% increase based on what we believe the rate will be right now, which is a 7% increase over the prior year. So next is the executive office. The most significant item that we budget in this line item is our building rent for this building, and that goes up slightly each year for the terms of our lease. Then next is memberships to local and national organizations like Chamber of Commerce and EDON, and then our contractual costs with the Chamber of Commerce for front desk reception services.
What's our lease up here?
We have 3
4 more years, I think.
Yeah, I think 3 after this budget period.
Yeah.
So yeah, 4.
3 after this budget process ending in 20, well, time,
29, I believe.
we're here till 29.
I believe so.
Okay, so 3.5 years.
The next sales and marketing, this is just a really small portion of the supplies and services budget, but this is like contractual costs for sales and their event management platforms, dues and subscriptions, supplies, and then awards and accolades for the marketing department.
You know, Courtney, real quick before Charlene, I know you're gonna jump off in 5 minutes. Do you have anything you wanna skip to or anything you wanna touch, or we good?
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I'm parked outside my next meeting. So I've got about 5 minutes till I jump off. And when you get to them, I just had questions on payroll. When you get to it, going into depth on benefits and other employee costs seem pretty high, and I didn't know if that was just insurance or if there's other benefits. And
yeah, so that, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, Shirley.
go ahead.
So that's where we benefit PERS and employee insurance costs. We are budgeting for a 15% increase in employee insurance costs in the next year. Just looking at our current loss ratio, it's not looking as favorable as we'd like. We haven't seen an increase that large in several years, but again, to maintain the same level of benefits for employees with no increases, with the loss ratio we're looking at right now, it could cost up to that much. We want to make sure that money's in the budget. We're not coming to the board later asking for money to be able to pay for insurance for our employees. So if we find that the renewal comes in under 15%, that's an area we can redistribute, but currently that's why that's a little higher than previous years.
Okay, and so it does include PERS.
It does, yeah, and that includes that increase for PERS for contributions from 33.5 to 36.75.
Oh, well, you ought to have first responders. Ours is up 8.5% for first responders and 5% for everybody else. So yes, increase over what we what we pay. So the PERS is an issue. And question on the insurance, are we self-insured?
We are not self-insured. We've evaluated the pros and cons of being self-insured, and we're an organization that's very sensitive to large claims because we have a higher proportion of retirees due to having a smaller active population in comparison. So it just really doesn't make sense for us to be self-insured because we've seen big swings and big claims in certain years from those retirees, and those hit us hard because we don't have that big of an overall population.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, we are at the city and we've seen years we're very sensitive to major claims. Does affect us because we're not that big. And then I think the only other question I had when we got to operating expenses, what special projects included? It's $5.2 million. And what
let's go ahead
special product, and I think you detailed it a little bit, but it seemed like a lot of money, and I just curious what that entails.
Yeah, let's go ahead and skip ahead to that section real quick, because that is a change from this year. And so the biggest portion of that change relates to USBC site fees. So in accordance with the contract with USBC, we pay site fees. So you won't see that in the fiscal 25 budget, but in fiscal 26, that's budgeted at 1.45 million. Then the next million of the increase is related to that increase for the RCBA being the at-risk promoter of events. So that's just budgeted under special projects in terms of line item classifications. But so that combined with the USBC site fees gets you to 2.45 million. And then we do have another 300,000 budgeted for a partnership with Nevada Athletics. And that's up to 300,000. Mike can provide a little more detail on how spending for that will work.
Okay, that gives me an idea of why it's high.
Yeah, so that's pretty much explains the jump. So the marketing jump is due to Nevada Athletics, event development is due to at-risk promotion, and then convention sales, that's due to the USBC site fees. And then the remainder of the jump is related to the costs associated with the American Fest Association. But that 381,000 is going to be offset by a budgeted subsidy credit of 320,000, and that's budgeted under other revenues.
Okay, perfect. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene.
So, kind of following up on hers. Insurance increasing, we saw a 20% increase. I just got the notification the other day, so I think it prudent being erring on the side of 20% because.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah, and when we're not budgeting to substantially change benefits for employees, we just don't want to reduce what they have right now if possible.
I agree.
Right, so if everyone's good with special projects, I can move on to next slide. Travel and entertainment. The majority of travel and entertainment is related to the sales department. As part of those discretionary spending cuts, that is where sales has made the majority of their cuts. So that's why you see the decrease from year to year. Overall marketing flat, slight decrease in executive office. The increase in general and administrative is due to reorganization. So previously, for example, in the HR department, we had one HR manager who did not travel or get professional and continuing education credits, things like that. So now we have a director level position, a manager level position, and the safety manager as well. And those positions all come with needing to get continuing professional education and stay up to date on current standards. So that attributes to the jump that you see there. And then also reclassifying the safety manager into our general and administrative budget. And we have on the screen here the breakdown of what the majority of travel and entertainment is, which is sales. So we have the breakdown of lodging, registrations, entertainment, local transportation, and then meeting expenses as well. So next is our apportionment to travel North Tahoe. So legislation requires that we grant 1/2 of the 6.625 that is collected in Washoe Beach back to Travel North Tahoe. So essentially we fund the majority of their budget with this allocation. We're projecting that it'll decrease slightly due to those decreases projected in room tax revenues, but on average, we give Travel North Tahoe about $2 million a year. That's the only entity that we remit funds to back in that way. They're the only one giving a portion of our CBA room tax back.
Courtney, on their projections, are you making your projections for them on your own information, or do they? You know what I'm saying?
We provide them with the information. So they reach out to us and Robert and ask for our projections and the assumptions going into those.
But I think you were talking about on the revenue side, right?
Yeah.
Where do they
I mean,
project?
they
their
may
revenue?
not
Do they-
be down, correct?
What's that?
Well, we're experiencing a bit of a dip, they may not.
So we do our detailed projections by district, and we've revised those a few times, and we do feel comfortable with a slight decrease in Washoe overall. So that, yeah, but not as drastic as like some of the other tax districts, but we do anticipate it will go down a little bit. And since their budget is primarily funded by us, we did want to be a little more conservative here, because we don't want to overpromise to them that we'll build their budget and then under deliver.
Okay.
So next is small equipment, very small portion of our budget, but IT did make a 7% decrease here from the prior year. These expenses are primarily associated with replacing aging equipment. You know, we want to make sure that people aren't using outdated old equipment that hinders their efficiency, because then that's just going to trickle down to other areas of the organization. So we aim for a 20% turnover ratio annually. And then lastly is contingency. This is an amount required by the state of Nevada that we built into our budget. It's not something we ever historically did into, but it is just part of stabilization for the overall budget. Then we'll quickly run through the other two funds, capital projects fund. Chad will be making a separate presentation on the capital improvement program. We budgeted for capital expenditures of 4.2 million in this next fiscal year. The next is our debt service fund, and it looks like the task bar isn't hidden, so you can't quite see that entire chart. But let's see if we can pull it up here. We've made really good progress on paying down our debt. In the last several years, we had two really successful refundings that accelerated the progress of paying down our principal. So this chart just shows where principal will be at the end of fiscal year 26.
It's great.
Yeah, it's really something we're really proud of, and, you know, obviously continuing to make progress in the next fiscal year. And so that actually concludes my presentation. So I'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
Are we due for refund? I mean, what are the terms of this current debt?
Yeah, so we, it wouldn't be favorable to
Right.
different interest conditions, and to work with that second refunding, we really essentially ended up locked in, and we felt that was a pretty good position, because in that first refunding, I believe we had around 9 million of savings, and that second we had 7, so we felt comfortable with getting in a position where
Yep.
we really wouldn't be able to refund again, and we don't necessarily need to compare to where the organization was previously.
Great. Nice spot to be in.
It is, yeah.
Good job.
Any question? I think Charlene's probably off. Do we show her? Any questions?
Answer them all.
John, all good?
Yeah.
No, I appreciate kind of being able, and again, I know we touched on this as being advisory only, there's probably got till next week too to kind of, there's probably some questions that may come up and sure might pester you with.
Oh, absolutely. I think that'd be great too. If the committee looks at this in more detail and has questions, just reach out, because that would be great. If you do end up with recommendations, we can incorporate those into the presentation to the board next week. So I think that'd be great. Just take your time and reach out with any questions or comments.
From my perspective, I mean, I struggle with the reconciliation of a conservative revenue budget with cost increases, right?
Yeah.
And so, and what that means, so when we talk about, I struggle with saying, well, let's reduce some of these cost increases when I think we do have opportunity to increase revenue if we chose to within that budget and still be not aggressive by increasing revenue. So I think when we take it to the full board, perhaps that's a discussion we need to have is that the revenue is really conservative and there are some cost increases in here. So
Yeah, and I guess for the room tax revenue, we did go a little more conservative, but the facilities revenue is a bit aggressive, especially with factoring in meeting that goal of the 6 concerts. So my concern is that if facilities revenues, you know, if for example, the director at the RDC isn't able to attain that, those shortfalls in facilities revenues have to be offset by room tax revenues. So I'd be a little concerned about increasing room tax revenue projections just based on facilities being more aggressive than usual this year.
And we are too, John, looking at, and Chad has been tasked with this as a priority, is to really looking at efficiency and opportunities within the facilities. That is where obviously our biggest expenses are, right? So we're gonna take a hard look at temp labor, we're gonna take a hard look at our security agreement, which is obviously up for renewal. And we're even gonna go into the extreme of looking at when we have vacant periods of time within those facilities, specifically downtown, what is the cost savings represented if we shut them down? Leave the exterior lights on, obviously, because you don't want to draw attention to the building. But in terms of energy efficiencies, labor efficiencies.
right, what's your carry cost look like?
We
Yeah.
think there are opportunities there.
I have, for the full board meeting. Back to this kind of direction on us assuming the risk and booking. And yet it feels like we've had a little bit of an uptick from partners looking at also,
Yes,
you know, I just think if we could have kind of the open discussion of, look, if we don't. If the 6 concerts don't all come from RCBA, but we're able to, they were coming from a Caesars or somewhere. I mean,
or a co-pro, or, yeah,
right, I mean, I think that would be a possible, you know, again, maybe that number's not as bad and.
yeah, it's more of, I think if I understand what you're saying is we have a target of an overall number.
Right.
How we get to the number,
Totally.
whether it's us independently at risk, whether it's the Caesar's Row request, whether it's a co-pro opportunity, the goal is to get to the number.
Yep. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 100% on our CBA.
Yeah, and I think when you look at that million, what I wrote in my, for the meeting, when I was going through notes is, well, okay. That $1 million could cover 6 concerts of risk perhaps, or 5 concerts,
Yeah.
all losing the same amount, because I mean, that number does look threatening when you look at it on its face.
Correct.
But when you think about it in terms of 6 and saying, okay, 4 of these are gonna make money and 2 of them aren't, but they're all going to bring more room revenue, which I don't know, again, back to the revenue budget again. We like to match revenue with expenses. If we're gonna spend that $1 million, what's it gonna take for us to elevate our room revenue in, you know, throughout the city in order to get that home? And I don't know that we budgeted the revenue to match that expense necessarily.
Yeah, fair question. And the other side of it too is the facility revenue itself. When we do a concert, the revenues that are generated for those individual concerts are significant.
Right.
See, I think the
Occasion,
facility revenue might be the bigger number, I mean.
It could be
Because
close.
when you're talking about 6 dates over
Yeah.
the entirety of the year, and then you start backing in locals, and let's just say it's not 100% sellout. The numbers aren't, I mean, even on that visitor, now I'm jumping around, but that visitor
There's a profile.
survey profile a couple months ago. To see special events and entertainment, or I think I'm probably blurring it, and don't get me wrong, it's important.
Yeah.
But you realize over the span of a year. That it's a lot of work and a lot of risk for pretty small.
Limited window.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway. So as far as moving forward, are we looking, basically take action? If everybody's good with it, a motion to approve to move forward, present on board.
Unamended, I think, right? There were no amendments, I don't think.
No,
Or
no.
Proposed.
Yeah, nothing proposed, and if anything does come up in the next week, I would just include a slide then that says, you know, post-meeting, the finance committee and these recommendations, that way the board has all the information, but.
Yeah, I think that works. I think the motion we're looking for today is to approve the budget as presented and recommend to the board of directors for adoption.
Okay.
I'll make that motion in your words.
Thank you, Richard.
Eloquently spoken.
Second,
Yeah.
with John, okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, nobody, and Charlene for the record is off.
Yes.
Off of that.
Noted.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Courtney and Mike and the whole gang
Great job.
for everything together. Thank you. Okay, we'll move, yeah, we'll jump into the E1. Is Aramark planning to,
Did you want to do capital just because it aligns with?
let's
our
do
budget?
that.
You wanna do
Yeah.
Capital?
Yeah, why don't, if everyone's, is that okay to take that? So we'll jump into E3 presentation discussions and potential direction staff regarding the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 25-26 for the RCBA.
Yeah, let's get IT out here, because they do need to share their presentation, so then these and these.
Oh, thank you.
Like I said, I can stay downstairs. Chad Peters for the record. So we're gonna just jump into the facilities capital projects budget for the next year. Right off the bat, we're gonna go Reno Sparks Convention Center. So we have 2.966 million for these projects this year. The big ones that we want to touch base on are the bleacher purchase. So the 808,000 for bleachers is currently we have 1,197 seats. This project will add 680 new seats, which will get us to a total of 1,880. which gets us really close to our number that we need for the Mountain West Conference tournaments that we agreed to host and take place here.
What is that number if you said real close?
So the ideal number, sorry, I'm going to get it for the record, to host conference championships, and it's not a, you must hit this number, a recommended number is 2,000.
Okay,
So we get to 1880, we also have the ability through our facility team to build up to a couple hundred seats.
so that shouldn't really be an issue.
Yes,
Okay, good. I don't wanna lose out for 120 seats.
no, sir.
Was the Mountain West, is it a 2-year commitment?
It's a rotation.
Okay,
So the goal between the Mountain West, the WAC, and then the Pacific, I can't remember the name of that other conference, is to get them in a rotation to where we have a conference championship, at least one every year. And then it rotates between us, Albuquerque, Spokane.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So every year we can expect one
And
tournament on
at a
a.
minimum, we should have at least one conference championship per year. Once, and this will be the first, we actually have 2 on the same weekend, is to get them under our belt. This way, the first year of learning how to run the meets. So this will be our first conference championship.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The next one that, just want to draw a little attention to is the purchase the new ballroom carpet, 350,000. So, that carpet just needs to be replaced. It's been there for a long time. It gets a ton of use. We have our revenues, Renee pulled the numbers for me. So, our ballroom revenues are about 302,000 and, in 2025, and we have over 39 events in there. That carpet is one big piece. It's rolled carpet. So when we have, like we had a forklift in there that made a mark, we can't just cut it out and replace squares. We'd have to replace a big chunk of it. So it gets us back to where we're at, where we can replace if something gets stained or something gets ruined, we can put in a new tile, and we can replace that. We can do some things to make that look nicer and over longevity.
Does the new carpet not have a repeat? Is it gonna be similar where we can't repair and fix? It'll be.
We're looking at squares.
We're looking just
We can-
regular squares where it doesn't have a lot of patterns, so we don't have to have
You can have a natural.
multiple options of
Yeah.
squares to
Yeah.
replace it. And another thing we're thinking about doing to offset some costs is, as you'll see later in the presentation, we're gonna do some carpet in the theater at the stadium, and we were thinking it's a good time for us when we do that we could put the same dye lot in with the ballroom carpet, and that way we have extra squares and we can replace them both places. And maybe we get a cost savings in purchasing extra square footage. Next is, and you can ask me any questions, I'm just kind of jumping to some of the bigger ones to talk about. The digital displays for 100,000, so outside the D Hall meeting rooms for event display to replace all of our paper and easels that we use. We just want to get a little more technology and have things that we can put up there. We can kick out straight from our offices. The events team could do more advertising and more display of what's in the room and what we're putting in there. Number 4, the purchase the new 500-ton chiller, that's 700,000. So right now we have 1,000 ton chiller, and our backup does not work. So if we lose our 1,000 ton, we need to have a backup that'll just do the primary to kind of keep us limping along, and it'll be good, and it won't be noticeable to the client. So this helps us get that back online and get us back to where we have a backup in case we need it. And then the new digital video wall for 140,000. So that's a backdrop for stages for sponsorship opportunities. So think of it like a 2x2 square pixelated where we can put behind stages and have opportunities to put up who the client is or what they want to put up there as far as a backdrop, or we can put up advertising sponsors. So it's an opportunity for us for the events team and the sales team to do some things within our clients a little more technology advanced.
We'll rent it, so we'll get revenue back for that.
Would it be used like in foyers and that, like the main
It's
foyer?
portable, so we
Yeah.
we can install it on any walls throughout the entire building.
So before I move to the next slide, is there any questions with the convention center?
Yeah.
Anything I missed?
have one, so. Do we have a 3-year, 5-year capital plan that we develop for each venue?
So yeah, and you'll see, when Chad gets to the end, the carry forward items.
I went through.
So we identify, we go through Every year we go through every facility, we prioritize. A lot of times it's safety, it's security, it's technology, it's repair, like the chiller. It's allocating capital funds based on worst case scenarios. And so those are the priorities. A lot of times we may start a project that may not materialize within that fiscal year. That becomes part of that carry forward. This year, when we sat down, we had several carry forward items that have been on the list for years. And so even though the carry forward list to me still looks extensive, it was twice as long when we started this process.
We eliminated a lot of it.
Is there a point when this venue, I mean, I recognize it's our shiny penny and we, is there a point when this doesn't become such a capital hog? On an annual basis? I mean, because it's 70%, 80% of the total number is, when does that?
I think when you look at the facilities as a whole, all four of them, there is never enough capital.
Right.
You can always find
No doubt.
something or somewhere to spend them, whether it's in repair or an advancement. Being by far the largest facility of the four, and it is the shiny penny, it is where the majority of our room night segmented business goes into. It generally is the priority. In the 8 years I've been here, and Stephen, you probably test this, it is generally by far where most of the capital is allocated. And we own the building.
Can I add?
Right.
Yeah.
We have, I like with the roofing needs to be done like every 4 years, and we just do it a section at a time because it's so expensive. So that right now we're on an off year, that'll probably start up again because the leaks will start. We have the whole parking area, lot C needs to be repaid, that's a huge expense.
That's about $1 million you carry forward for that, I think.
Yeah, and so it seems like when we get something done, there's something else. We need new carpet throughout all of the concourses and the meeting rooms. That's another expense I was told is like 3.5 million. So we know the things that we need to do. We're just trying to figure out how to do it conservatively.
Like the skylight replacement that's on here for what class is 600,000. Those are the lights when you walk through in the facility. They're the weather has basically you can't see out of them because they're all what the material you call it. But besides that, just from an optics perspective, is that they leak. And so every time it rains and if we have a convention, we have buckets out on the floor. Okay, but
So,
I,
go ahead, Rick.
speaking both revenue and kind of stepping out of the box with, at the convention center, we have materials to host indoor soccer, futsal, stuff like that.
we do.
Are we fully utilizing that? Question, what's the cost? Because I know that the demand for indoor facilities is increasing more and more and more. I think that's an area that we can capture. And can that equipment be moved to the event center, use more, use more and create more revenue in those? Because I can tell you the top 3 soccer leagues alone would pay dearly for more indoor facilities in the
Right.
winter months.
Yeah, we get calls all the time for it. So we don't own the equipment, like the actual courts come from, I think, actually Jam on it gives them, rents them and so forth. So all we really do is turn the lights on and open it up and they set it up and they take care of it. The challenge that we find is that we don't have long periods of time that the buildings are open. So the Reno Event Center, if it has 3 events in a month, you can set up and practice for 4 days or have it during, and then you gotta take it all back up and then you gotta put it back down for the next week.
So we don't
So that's-
really have a facility to where we
Yeah.
could theoretically host on a longer term basis. To that because of other events that we've booked.
Right, so,
Okay.
and in the winter months, like we will host pickleball if we have it available. But because it is a subsidiary of Jam on it, they own the equipment, they have the labor, they can pick it up and they can take it away and bring it back way easier than.
It's no different
than we
than
do.
NCDA when volleyball's here or during the track season. There are going to be times where unfortunately we have to remove the courts or
Right.
remove the track because of other business.
Gotcha.
And they
Okay.
do it, they work around that, but that seems to be the one thing that interrupts. Is somebody calling and wanting to use the space.
Well, I got a call from RYSA, so I could say I presented it. I
Yes.
got the answer.
Yes.
Here's what it is. So
Yes.
thank you for the explanation.
And we'd love to have them. We'd love to provide the facilities. It's rent for us. Just a matter of the duration of time they need it. We can't just give them that entire
Yeah,
window.
no, that makes perfect sense. So great.
But if they're willing, we'll work around it with them.
Okay,
For sure.
perfect. I'll let them know that. Thank you.
Okay,
And the two things I'd like to add, just to talk about is, one of the things we're trying to do is update our technology in our buildings. So, you know, like the digital keys and the digital displays, the digital video wall, there's opportunities for us to rent those, sell those, but then like the digital keys, like right now, if someone has an event, we hand them a bag full of keys. It'd be really nice if we had a digital key where we could just go slide it and give them one key, and then when they're gone, we just deactivate that key. If they walk off with it, it's a $7 card replacement that we could have them sign ahead of time and say, hey, if you take off this, it's $15. So there's a lot of revenue that we could get back on some of the technology that we're using, or that we're using this capital to go towards. So it will, you know, the return of investment is gonna be pretty good on most of this stuff for us, technology wise.
And I think, John, just to really give you a concrete answer to your initial question at the start of this discussion.
I think you
Is-
already know.
is
No.
at one time, they're, you know, presented to this board, and we did a feasibility study, and Stephen Farming, Ben, I know remembers this, of expanding the convention center. Thank God we didn't, from where we sit today. But really the message back to our board at that time, when the decision was not to expand, was to make the existing 600,000 square foot convention center the best 600,000 square foot convention center in the country, right? And so a lot of the things that we do to the Capitol, like these digital keys, is right now the majority, I think 80% of our doors are a hard key. You have to literally put the key in to lock and unlock it. And when we're doing site inspections, or when we have to give keys to our customers, unfortunately, a lot of those keys, they leave the building, they leave the city, and we may have to rekey. So now digital is, you know, card key, just like a hotel room. It just advances us and puts us in a competitive set where we're already behind.
When will that get completed? If this
The
gets
keys
approved?
is a quick turn. It's, if approved, the budget approved, I think by June, right?
Yeah, we can move that around as we see fit, so, and I'm sure everyone here would be really excited to bump that up and move it up
For sure.
as fast
Yeah,
as we
it's
can, so.
I just know it's involved though, some of the conduit running, right? And
Yeah, so great point.
Yeah.
So the A hall is, there's conduit that has to run because we need power to it in the ethernet or whatever we need to it. So when we run that in the A hall, we have brick walls. So we would have to either cleanly and you know, aesthetically put in conduit that runs to those doorways, or if we wanted to, looking at costs, we could find out what it would cost us to fur out that wall, you know, a good 2-3 inches to where we could stick it behind something. If we lose 2-3 inches in the hallway, it doesn't kill us. But you know, that there's a big expense to that compared to doing something aesthetically that we can just run down the wall and run to those rooms. But we want to start on the south side of the building and work our way that way. So we can make sure that we take care of the ones we can and go.
So mid-June.
Third week of June.
Yeah,
There is an expense savings associated with it too, with your rekeying and the, you know, the.
yeah, you're going to a
Rekeying
card
all those
key
keys,
that's $3 or whatever it costs us to, when you get a new key, it's like $25-30 just to get it, and then we have to cut it and get everything
And then
else.
once the group is done with the facility, we deactivate the card.
Right.
And we can track who's getting in and out of things as well, so that's really good for us from a security and a safety standpoint.
When things.
We know who's getting in rooms, when they're getting in rooms, we can track a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving past this one. We're gonna go to the Livestock Event Center. So the grandstand bleacher repair for 90,000, so in the pull-out bleachers in the main arena, which is the lower pavilion. We have a safety issue though with the bleacher repair, because those get pushed in and out all the time, and as you well know, if you think back to your days when you're a kid, when those bleachers come out, sometimes they don't come out the right way. And they get replaced, they get damaged. So that's a safety one more than anything. That's something that we're trying to bring those bleachers up to where we don't have to worry about them coming out and not being set properly, or you know, it's like putting a folding table up. If the legs aren't under there perfectly, you could have a safety issue. So that just brings us up to where we feel we need to be with our safety on the grandstand bleachers. The other one I wanna look at is the $60,000 new buddy trailer, because that sounds kind of like, why are we spending money on that? So the buddy trailer is actually, it takes us to 40 stalls instead of 20 stalls. If someone's mucking a stall for the animals, with the current system we have now, we can only do about 20 stalls in a day. Having the buddy trailer is something that gets pulled around by our smaller tractor. And it's a little bigger. It's just kind of like a little utility cart that dumps and that they can dump all the stalls and everything in, and they just pull it over to an area. But it also mulches. So it mulches all the compost. It saves us a lot in our waste management and our dumpsters and everything else that we do. So there's a cost savings in us getting that. And there's also a time management that saves us a lot by being able to get this buddy trailer. So that's what that one is.
And just to add to this, and you might, I don't want to go through them all or not, but you'll notice that, and this facility out of the four was the most difficult for us to decide what was a priority and how much to allocate. Obviously, because we are still waiting on what our agreement's gonna look like with the state once that bill goes through. So we really focus on the marginal expense capital items instead of repaving the parking lot for $1 million or whatever it may be, right? Because we don't know what capital the state is going to commit to the facility until the agreement's done.
My question was, should we defer capital on this site entirely until we understand? I mean, that's the note that I made on here was.
I mean, we tried to identify items that regardless of the outcome of that agreement, we're going to need, and they were
That
truly,
we would be responsible for. If that-
and they would be assets that we would own.
Okay.
So
You think there's.
if the agreement didn't work out and we were no longer in the agreement, we could either use these in other facilities or sell them as an asset.
Okay.
Either so.
So regardless of the agreement, we're still gonna be doing business in there.
We will be we could, depending on that, yes, we would be renting the
Right.
facility.
Right.
Um,
So we wouldn't have any cap, I mean,
Right.
be a tenant.
I don't know if that's what they're assuming.
no, they're not. We don't believe that. We think it's going to be status quo, but we
Right.
just didn't want
I
to
think so,
commit
too. Right, I agree.
$500,000 to a project.
Right,
If the state's gonna,
and I do think that's being heard today is for.
oh, is it today?
Yeah. So stay tuned.
Good.
And we heard that it was written into it that it would be effective immediately, once it's heard, so if it is heard today, we could know something fairly soon, so that's good. The only other thing I wanna add on this one is the new turf tractor, so a turf tractor, I know everyone you see turf and you think grass, but actually, that's our smaller tractor there. So we have to rip the stadiums and we have two bigger tractors. If we don't have a small tractor and the one we have is extremely old and sometimes it starts, sometimes it doesn't. So the other one was over 20 years old. So now we're getting a smaller tractor. It actually helps pull the buddy trailer. It would just get us kind of up to par where we need to be to do all the things we need to do there. And once again, to Mr. Larraga's point, is anything that we're doing there, it's something we can either pull, sell, it's an asset of ours, and we can take it to other properties, or we could eventually end up selling it, so. Okay, the next one is National Bowling Stadium. One of the things that we want to talk about with the stadium this year is we did a good job last year of activating a bunch of spaces. It just needed some upgrades. This year, we're focusing on spending money on areas to reactivate and enhance the spaces that we don't get a lot of use. So we focus on new carpet for the theater. That carpet's 30 years old. It's had the haunted house go through it. It's very torn, worn. It looks outdated. So by updating that, we have a lot of people going through there right now. We have a lot of interest. You know, last night we had an event. I gave 3 tours. All 3 tours, the best thing they want to talk about is the theater at the end of the day. I'm very, very excited to activate that space. I think it's a space that we're not utilizing near enough. We've upgraded the sound system, everything in that place is just super cool. I mean, I'm telling you, if you ever have an opportunity to come down there, I'd love to show you guys what we've done in that space, because it's very, very cool. And then the stadium club upgrade. So our stadium club is a space that we use for our staff meetings, but even last night when we're showing it off, you know, that bar and backdrop to that bar in there it was built in 1893 up in Michigan and brought there. And so it's a space that just has these windows and areas that look to downtown, beautiful, but the windows, like the skylights at our SCC, are all stained and just, you know, you can't even look out at night because they're so worn. So we're trying to get a true number of what it would look like to replace those windows, get blinds. Our blinds are over 30 years old. How do we get blinds that we could move up and down? But we don't want to do the blinds before we do the windows, because if you still can't see out the window, it doesn't matter. So those are the two things we really want to focus at the stadium.
What about, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sean.
So we're working on a new USBC contract, right? I know most of that's deal points, but as I went through this, I started thinking, is there anything in terms of a capital expense that they would be interested in us doing? Or have we asked them, are there capital things that would, you know, maybe clear some of the hurdles on some of those deal points if we had X, Y, or Z? I don't know what those things are, but.
So a little history, there has always been capital requests or asks through USBC of the National Bowling Stadium. A large one that we did, I can't remember how many years ago, but was the seating. All the seating, the theater seating was moved back. That was a significant expense that was paid for through the surcharge and capital. One of the items, obviously the lane repair every so many years is actually in the contract. We actually priced it out a little over $1 million for the 88 lanes if we were to do it today based on pricing. One of the items they requested, which we felt was not necessary, was the mirror panes above the lane. They wanted those removed, but it was more for optics visual than it was as for any other reason. So we didn't feel it was necessary. The answer is yes. I don't think that would move the needle from a perspective of negotiating the terms of the agreement or an extension.
And I think to your point, now after going to a women's tournament this last year for me, we did change a lot of the carpets coming out of the garage into the elevators, things that they have addressed when we do our walkthrough, when they do their load in with us. So we, you know, I listen and I talk to those things, and then we talked before about what can we do that's not a high expense that we can change and upgrade some of those spaces. Our engineers are really good there. There's some spaces that they occupy that we just upgrade kind of throughout the year at low cost when we're doing other projects, and just get everything looking really nice. So when they come in, there's no, hey, this looks, you know, like we need to do something here, do something there. So we have a pretty good handle of what they're looking for and what they want. I do think with us activating the Kingpin, the Hall of Fame, right? So we're deactivating that, and we're gonna make that 7,500 square feet of space that we can rent, or it's going out to RFP. That's a space that we really feel like USBC might use or utilize, but we need to kind of gauge that and see what's going on there when we do RFP and how we put that out and what we propose to whoever comes into that space. But that's going to be a nice space for us to use for our use to get a return of investment on that space.
On the stadium club upgrade, are the windows in that part of that?
Yeah.
125?
Yeah, so the stadium club upgrade is specifically for those windows, and not the whole University Way, because those go all the way down. That's just for that section right there.
Okay.
Any other questions at the stadium? Okay. The next one is our Reno Event Center. So at the Reno Event Center, we are once again trying to reactivate things and make it better for the client when they visually come in there. So new pipe and drape, our pipe and drape there, some of it's outdated. And a lot of things I'm looking into doing is just anything carpet, pipe and drape, tables, chairs, any of those things. We're trying to come up with maybe a 4 to 5 year, even painting, 4 to 5 year plans that we can do a maintenance program that we can put low costs into our budget, into our expenses every year that we can, and so we're not spending these $300,000 benchmarks, and we're doing more of a $5,000 to $15,000 to $25,000 benchmark. But the new bleacher curtains, that's just the curtains when the bleachers come out, that's to make them look real nice. They're all torn and ripped, and so we could put some advertising on the side there, put our Reno Tahoe logo and all that, and make that look nice. And then purchase the new lighting and sound equipment. That's specifically so we can have a better base product. So when a concert comes in, we have to get Star Sound or someone in to come in there and put in everything from scratch. If we put in better sound, better equipment, spotlights, concert lights and things, now we can rent that back to the client, and we can absorb some of those revenues instead of just expenses and just charging it back to the client. So that's an opportunity for us to get a better base package. What does that look like for us in our return of costs of a client coming in and running a concert there?
And it ties in obviously to our commitment to activating the facility and driving more concerts these advancements will make the venue more attractive.
Okay, that was a question that I had, are there other things based on that activation strategy? Are our green rooms up to date? Are there, is there anything else we need that will help us attract or retain talent?
So we've been, similar to like Renee was talking about, piecemealing certain projects within the building. Same thing, the RC, right? So the suites was a big project, the green room, lighting, sound, it's a process. It's just, and you'll see in the next slide, I actually, complete transparency, had Chad break down the percentage of allocation by facility, because that always comes up. We are RCV, although I think it's very low. For our agreement with the city on those downtown facilities, we are only obligated to spending capital of 10,000 or less. We've obviously are recommending significant capital improvements in both buildings to enhance both facilities in areas that can generate new revenues. And so that was the goal. So even though the percentages by facilities look low, we feel like, putting 300,000 into light and sound is a big investment in that facility.
The one question I'd have on light and sound, and I defer more to the professional, but like in Joel's seat, when he's dealing with the artists, the higher end artists that you go, the more specific they're gonna come in with, this is our lit, right? This is, we only use X or something comparable.
Yes.
I'm assuming we're not getting locked into something that we're still gonna have to go to Star Sound.
So the equipment we're talking about is more about a comedian or a low end, we're not talking the performance.
Nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
the concerts and the big concerts. This is more of our, our system that's more of our just base package. If we're gonna have a comedian come in and do things.
Or even, I'm trying to think of the name of it could be a convention group coming in for
Like
a
when
seminar.
Shiners used the facility.
Right.
For, I think they had 3 evenings. This will help enhance the sellability of the building.
Yeah, right now we have nothing. Everything is just a box that
Then
we
you
have to
got it.
build.
Third
So
party.
this would, just the basics so that there's something.
And it's one of those things that if we have to add something, it would be very minimal, especially for that, like the Shriners or something like that, or a Jerry Seinfeld, they would be like, oh, this is plenty what I need, there's nothing else. Now we can charge that back to the client and we can take that revenue. So I just want to back up one slide. I want to go to the IT project. So we do have in the budget, the capital budget, there's a storage for backups, the top one there, the storage array upgrades. So that's storage for our backups for all of our facilities and for everything that we do for our CVA. And then the other one is core switch upgrades. That's a network switch for public internet use. So just trying to keep up on our technology, not let things get too outdated, and make sure we stay with the times and do these things. So this will be through all the venues. This isn't specific, and also here at RTM. So this is all 5 of our facilities that we operate. So, and then going to the next slide, that's our percentages. And once again, if you add all that up, that's our 4.205 for our 9.6 of our total budget that we have for this year. And then our last slide, I'm sorry, it's so small, there's detail there, it's in your packet, but this is all our carry forward. And once again, Courtney, Mike, Renee, Amy Dickens, we sat down and went through this. We went through all of our venues and we took out the ones that we felt were not needed anymore, or we already kind of addressed them some other direction. And then these are the ones that we know that are in progress, have to be needed, they're phased out, or they're in different phases. So this is where we're at with this, and we do have all this in already approved and in our budgets. That's all I have for you. If you have any questions.
One thing I've noticed the last couple of years, are we all good surveillance camera, that security system wise?
So I will say RSCC, I would say yes.
We can use more, but yes,
But-
we're better than we have been.
Yeah, we are. And then at the stadium, I know it's something that Joel and I are at REC in the city are looking into. We do have full-time security down there, so we have way less issues than we could have, right? Because we're doing our hourly walks and we're there 24/7. So, but there is some areas that we feel like we need more coverage. The good thing is John Morris at the stadium is extremely kind. And we have been talking a lot about how do we take some of the cameras, so there's some areas like Kingpin, the Hall of Fame, because we were keeping track of their inventory that was in there of all their merchandise. So now we can take some of the cameras out of there. If they're not too old, we can move those around the building. We put them, so.
Yeah.
Pretty much cost savings of things we can do, but we will bring that probably in the next fiscal year for our capital projects for those two buildings.
Just seems like something that's always just chip away. It's like you never
Like
get
Wi-Fi.
there. What's that?
It's like Wi-Fi.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of advancements in cameras too, along with one,
Yeah.
right? We're getting on some of the fish aspects.
Yep. Okay. I think we're. Any questions on our end? Just looking for a motion to remove this form, right? Ben?
Yep, same as the budget, so I think it's a motion to approve as presented and recommend to the full board for approval.
So move your turn, Joe.
Right. John with the first, second, Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it passes. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. We jump to E1 with Airmark.
Jennifer's on, she's on
Is she on?
she's on the phone.
So just for the record, we'll tee it up. Presentation by Airmark of the fiscal year 24-25 budget back and performance in March 2025 by facility and the proposed fiscal year 2025-26 budget.
Jennifer, you there?
Hello, this is Mike Dellencofer, controller with Airmark. Can everybody hear me?
Hey, Mike, yeah, we got you.
Okay, I'm kind of doing it twofold with my laptop because the voice doesn't work too well, so I got it also the Zoom on my phone to talk.
Yeah, thanks for your patience, Mike, too. I know we shuffled things on you, but appreciate you hanging in there.
Oh, no worries. Kind of learn.
Go ahead, I'll give you the floor and we'll go from there.
All right, is the presentation? Okay, I don't see the presentation yet up there.
Yep, you're up.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Oh, I don't
No,
know.
we're not. Now we're not.
They might have to share the screen or something.
I just see everybody's picture.
Is it us sharing the screen there?
I think they're gonna share the screen, yeah. They might have to come out here.
Just one second, we'll just make it an adjustment.
IT.
Sure.
Lower that capital in IT.
And I'll just give you a little introduction to myself because I know most of you have no clue who I was until today, probably. I'm Mike Dellencofer. I'm controller with Airmark, based in Las Vegas, overseeing our Las Vegas properties as well as our Reno properties as well. So nice to meet you all.
See it now?
I can see it.
Great.
See us now?
I want to grab the clicker.
Oh, we have a quick one.
I think we have to click for them.
Okay, Mike.
All right, so I'll jump to the convention center. Budgeted total revenues are 2.5 million. After all associated cost of sales, payroll, other expenses, we are budgeting a RSCVA profit of 633,000. Next would be the event center, budgeting 1.4 million, and after all associated costs, coming in at a profit for the RSCVA of 179,000.
Go back up. I apologize to the RSCC, and if you want us to save questions till the end, just tell us if we're messing up your rhythm.
No, you're fine if you want to do however you'd like it, and we'll do our
Help me
best.
understand what is your other income in there?
The other income would be subcontractor income, administrative charges from catering. Those and those are the two big ones that are in that number.
did you say 2.5 million or 1.5?
2.5, because you got the sales plus the other income.
Okay, I see what you, okay, never mind, my apologies.
Okay, I'm still a little confused. So you're outsourcing, but you're getting revenue from that outsource.
Correct. Yep, from a lot of subcontractors, correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No problem. So I'll move on to the event center, total revenue of 1.4 million, and after all associated cost of the 179,000, profit to the RSCVA. The livestock were coming in around 300,000, and then after all the associated costs, showing a profit of 26,000. Last but not least, the bowling center, we're coming in around 1 million, and after all associated cost, $106,000 profit to the RSCVA. And then total revenues for the combined all four properties, we're showing total revenue around 5.3 million, and a profit to the RSCVA of 943,000.
Can I ask a quick question? Richard J. for Garbage. So convention center, 2.5 million income. Our profit, 632,000, roughly 40%, right?
About, yeah.
No, it'd be about 26%. The other ones look to be about 13, 12, and 11%. Seems to, is the convention center that much more profitable simply because of the size of revenue being $2.5 million, the cost of efficiencies, or what are the other ones at 13, 12, and 11%?
A lot of it's because of the higher revenues at the convention center, and also, with fixed labor, we are allocating that between all four facilities, based on a percentage of revenues.
Okay.
So a lot of the expenses, we have to do by allocation, and especially a good example was like the management and labor.
Online, about 18, 19% to us.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And then at the bottom, I'm showing just sales only, not including any other income. I'm showing the 3 years of actuals, of 3 million from 2023, about 3.3 million in 2024, and then for the current year actuals plus 2 months of projection of showing around 3.8 million.
And when you've made your projections, is your team getting with our group on what's being booked, or how are you?
Are you talking regarding the budget for next year?
Correct.
Yes, we collaborated quite a bit, especially this current year. For next year's budget, we collaborated with them quite a bit, and used a budget buildup file of all the events that are planned for the next year. So I feel that this file, as long as those events occur, we should be in good shape. In prior year budgets, I will say that we didn't have that much as detail, and we used prior year history of the 2 years. So I think this budget is much more solid than in past years.
Good. Thank you. Part of my challenge, quite honestly, is I'm not even really that clear of our terms of the agreement, right? And again, and it's not even so much a question, it's just more a statement to this group that, these numbers, again, it gets into their expense baseline too, correct?
Yeah, and that's one difficult thing, is that we receive the net of revenues and expenses. So if Aramark's expenses go up substantially, the RSCVA receives less funding, and that's what we're seeing. Partially, that's also contributed to the RSCVA receiving far less this year than in prior years. In addition to what Mike the Controller at Aramark mentioned, with the revenue budget not being based off actual bookings in the building, their expenses have gone up dramatically the last few years, and we only receive the net.
do we get a breakdown of where those expenses are?
We do not receive a breakdown by facility each month. We have requested that in the past, but essentially we just receive overall numbers. And we don't receive explanations from month to month, even though we have requested those of what's driving, for example, labor and things like that. In our last meeting, I requested, they provide some detail into USBC staffing, because we kind of want to look at those numbers and make sure we're not overstaffed.
Right.
And we're receiving a reasonable profit, because we have to remit some of those profits back to USBC as well. So I would like to see a bit more detail in regards to those expense numbers, depending on what the Airmark team can provide.
But can we make a formal request of them right now?
I would, I don't know if you're following but I do, I think. And whether it comes out, I know we're advisory as a group, but I think one of our recommendations to the full board would be getting into more of a detailed. I just don't think we have a full understanding. of the
Yeah.
Numbers.
I think it would be good if this presentation included more detail into the expenses and comparisons from year to year, even if it was high level, just showing labor, how much is labor going up, how much are their general and administrative allocations going up, and some explanations behind those, so to make an informed decision.
Yeah, I'd like to see that formally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And that way I feel more comfortable in what we're reporting back to the full board. Good.
And this is
Agreed.
public record request, request in a public meeting for this information, so it's recorded.
Right.
I will note that going forward, we have done a reduction in management labor of two positions. So we are working on lowering that labor number, because it for example, I got right in front of me through current year through March, the percentage of labor into sales, we're talking like 63%. So that's quite high. So we are working on lowering that number, and with limiting those two positions, we're estimating around 200,000 savings per year with those.
I'd like to really see what Courtney has requested. And I'd like to see correspondence to address each one of her requests.
Yeah, because I'd really like to know what's driven up that labor number so much in the past years, and then what changes are being made, they're going to be implemented in the next budget. Because to really have an understanding and approve the next budget, we need to understand what happened before and how is it being fixed and how is it not going to happen again. And that's what we just don't have a clear picture of right now.
So we need that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if all of these numbers are through March too, what's the big revenue fall off that we've seen this year? We're talking about a revenue fall off from 3.2 to 2.4. Again, if all of these numbers are through March, through comparable periods.
Correct. The
I
biggest
don't think I heard what
thing,
that was.
the biggest one with the current year to the budget is the REC. We're almost $800,000 difference in revenue. Just the events just didn't materialize based on what we projected, based on prior history.
So what, in the discussions that Courtney and I have had with Airmark, when we went through the actual projected revenues by facility, what we've learned was they did not specifically get with our facilities team to look at what was truly booked in the facility. They looked at prior year actuals
Right.
when we had significant catering and food and beverage in the REC because of some groups that were in there. And they just assumed those revenues were coming back, when we clearly, if they would have looked at the actual bookings that was on the books, they would have saw that those events were not scheduled to meet.
So they're just going on past and not actual.
Yeah, it was a learning experience, right? You can't
Correct.
you can't look at like an arena where you have games and those games are going to materialize, right? These are facilities where the business ebb and flows. And especially when you look at a facility like the REC, which is a single-use facility, where once in a while you have an exception where you may have diners in there for 3 catered meals of $1,500 each. And when you just look at the prior year actual and you budget that next year, and that business isn't there, your numbers are not realistic.
Yeah, and that's simply like the room tax budget, right? We don't just look at last year and say, okay, up 2%. We look at detailed projections for conventions, what holidays are falling on weekends. We factor in all these detailed projections. So to find, we'd asked about this starting mid-year, because we saw that the budget to actual just was not at all matching up. And it took several attempts to get that information. And then that's how we discovered that Airmark did not build a budget based on actual events in the building. The first draft of their fiscal year 26 budget again was just based on actuals and not events in the building. So we rejected that and had them resubmit this budget based on actual events in the building.
So your attempts have kind of been met with unanswered.
Yeah, there was non-responsiveness. Yeah, back in February, there was one specific request that Renee and I made asking, hey, what is the difference between these budget to actual variances? And we need an explanation by month and by building. And we were met with a response saying we do not have that information. We escalated that to Aramark's district manager, who was extremely helpful in helping us set up a meeting with them to get the information, but it was met with hesitation in the past.
So we shouldn't have that whatsoever. I mean, we should be able to ask this information,
Yeah.
get this information, and not have to go through a discussion like we're going through right now, saying, why didn't we get this information?
Right.
Or the client.
Yes.
Right, so for the fiscal 25-26 budget, we had Renee sit with their GM and go through every event by facility for them to be able to prepare a budget based on what is on the books or what is forecasted to be on the books based on groups that we know that are coming back.
Should we have had to go to that level, or is this something that Aramark should have?
They
See.
should have been preparing the budget based on actual events in the building for this entire budget period. We shouldn't have had to find that out this late in the budget process for fiscal 25. The first draft of the budget shouldn't have been based on actuals. It shouldn't have taken as much back and forth as it did. We appreciate that they were willing to sit with Renee, but that's going above and beyond when we contract them to prepare the budget.
So that took time out of Renee's
Yeah.
busy schedule already to work on stuff that Aramark should be doing automatically.
Contractually
So I
too.
hope my tone of voice is being heard here, and as a fiduciary for this group, this is what we have to do.
Right. Well, and I think, or if not, I think we need to look at the terms of the agreement and take next steps there, but hopefully we can get it on track. And I know, Mike, you're the messenger, so.
You need to take this message back.
Yeah,
No problem.
yeah,
I will say, as long as we can get that information, that we got from Renee, I don't see that that's not a problem doing these budgets going forward,
yeah, I agree. I think we need to reboot kind of the sharing of information of how this is done because, I'm from the private side of things, wearing my hat. So we're all under one roof and we have the ability to be, right? You call everybody into a room and you're sharing information. It needs to be somewhat handled in the same, this is unique, right? Because it's a public facility and a public agency and we're outsourcing. But we got to improve it too. And I think to answer to the board, without bearing you in task, I think getting Courtney, Mike, Renee, and your folks in, so we're not having this discussion again, is where we want to get, so.
Yeah, and definitely more accurate budgeting because, we budgeted to receive $1 million in net profit and through March, we're sitting at a $20,000 net loss, which is contributing to our facilities loss being over budget every year.
Anything else needs to be covered? How do we take this forward to the board? Is this is this a drill down of the budget discussion?
So my understanding is this, and Ben, this is a separate agenda item that they're presenting the budget, which we have reviewed and accepted based on the information we provided them and their
Okay.
forecasted revenues. More detail is always great, right? Then we really understand how they're getting to their number, but at this point, as we sit here today, we were comfortable with the 943 as profitability back to their CDA.
Okay.
And I like the recommendations of the presentation to the board being more detailed, so the board can make an informed decision and see a trend of, how things have gone over year to year. This is a good start, but I think it might be a little more helpful to have it broken out by facility, by slide, a little more digestible format.
We expressed, after reviewing this, the board had some legitimate concerns regarding the request of information not being provided to us, and that we recommend that our provider give us more information as requested in the past. So the board understands that we really thrilled into this.
Right. I agree. I think it would be noted for the board meeting and. So we're accepting it with the understanding that we've got work to do and.
We've got concerns.
Right.
Yeah, we'll hear from staff as to whether or not those concerns have been met, right? Whether or not they feel like we're getting the information that will allow us allow this contract to continue, or should we look at alternatives?
Agree with Courtney, you'll be kind of our, Courtney and Mike, you guys be our point person saying, yes, we're getting the information, or no, and if we're not, then to John's point, we gotta look down the
Zero
road.
remedies we have.
If it makes
Absolutely.
sense, we can introduce the agenda item and make sure the board has informed of the history and where we sit
Yeah.
currently in.
And maybe before the budget meeting, right, next year, if we think about this process next year, you come to us in whatever it is, if it's March, if it's February, hey, we're getting what we need from Airmark or we're not,
Yeah,
in order to complete. the
kind of a remedy
process.
period. Yep, I think that makes sense.
And we have talked to Courtney on providing, detailed information going into the next year of basically telling the story of the actuals versus the budget and, if it's good or bad, regardless of either way of, why, why did we hit it or exceed it or miss it? So we will be providing that information going forward.
Thank you, Mike. And do we need an action item in the form of a motion?
So I think it would be helpful, and I think what we've talked about here is tentatively approving this budget with the caveat that we'd like more detail to review more in depth at the board meeting.
Okay.
But we're moving it forward.
Make a motion in that form.
So move that we accept the report
With the understanding.
with the understanding that we expressed our concerns regarding information requested and not provided. And we're asking for more detailed information to move forward.
That's how it would be. So whether.
So you made the motion, so you
Second.
sort of amended it, so you accept that amendment?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
we got a motion and a second, we can
Okay.
vote.
Second.
Um,
Okay, all in favor?
Alright,
Aye. Okay. Item moves forward. Thank you, Mike. We'll be back in touch.
No problem.
Thank you. I know we're on a tight
We're
line
good.
here. Let's
We're doing
jump,
great.
let's jump to E2, review and discussion and possible action, recommend approval of funding for the Reno Aces in the amount not to exceed $20,000 total value.
So I'll just provide a little history, if that's okay, Stephen,
Yeah.
I'll put together for the record, and then I'll turn it over to Christina to fill in the details. And this committee recalls when we were preparing the budget last year, and then again this year, there were a minimal number of organizations that were grandfathered in, receiving funding through RCBA without any process or justifications or applications to be filled or reviewed by staff or board. They were just granted funding. We eliminated that last year's budget. We eliminated again this year's budget. That became the result of creating the unsolicited policy. So the illnesses have received in the past $25,000, 15,000 in cash and 10,000 in trade, due to an error that we made in loading information. So this, as the review today, is at 20,000. So we will revise that possibly for the board meeting. I believe was the goal, what we were going to do if it goes through this committee at this time. But they did submit the unsolicited application. Senior staff felt that due to the partnership and what we've been doing with the Reno Aces, we're exploring other opportunities with them as well, that it is a good partnership, it's a good relationship. So we wanted to bring this to the finance committee for review.
Well, you basically covered it, but the Reno Aces Baseball Club submitted an unsolicited proposal submission form. The internal committee did review it. It includes activation in, I'm gonna call it like the grassy area in the outfield. I'm sure they have an official name for that area, but I can't recall what it is, but that's kind of where this is at. It includes some digital marketing, some signage, and then that $10,000 of in-kind is a trade between our venue and their venue, with sign-in.
good deal.
The one thing I would like to note to the question that this committee posed earlier is currently, as we sit here today, we do not have the funds in that fund. Without the RTC paying us the 125. So I don't know if that precludes us from at the board meeting approving it when we don't technically have the funds in the accounts.
The board meeting next is a week from tomorrow.
Yes, but we have to post Monday morning by 9.
By 9. Friday, I'd like to go.
Do we know for a fact they're giving us money?
Verbally.
I mean, I think this is a good community thing to do, but I don't see the tie into what we do in terms of driving rooms and driving, this is everything that I've seen doing, and I've gotten the same pitch deck from them, and we've gone through, we participated as sponsors personally on it, you know, at my company, but I struggle with the RSCBA tie into this, other than as a community goodwill benefit. I don't think there's any, we're not driving anywhere except this.
No, I agree. I think it's a wonderful experience. Is a attendee, but the fact it's kind of been on this track, one thing I just wanted to clarify. So out of the 25,000 being requested, how much in kind, how much cash?
15 and 10, correct?
15 cash, 10 in kind.
No.
It's what we did this last year.
And I like the in-kind piece too, that, hey, if we can help promote ourselves there and if we're getting them into our venues, I think those are reciprocal.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
it's still
part
a
of-
community that we're giving back,
Yeah.
you know, our CBA dollars to our local
Yeah.
community, not just in driving revenue from outside, but also within.
Yeah.
So,
If this came under, the other definition, what was the threshold?
10,000.
10,000, I mean. I'd even be willing to look at some sort of intermediary where we do that one more time and then. I think
We could go back to the ACES and have them resubmit 10 cash, 10 in kind. Then that can be reviewed at the staff level and determined without bringing it to the board.
I mean, I do think there's to your point, and I think we have a certain involvement on the community level, I think makes sense, and that's where your discretionary, I think if there's things that, you know, don't have just 100% return on tourism, but yet it's the overall community feel like, you know, I'm not saying they don't drive anything, but I think a lot of it is maybe the greater area, or somebody's in town already here to attend a game.
professional baseball puts us on the map
Yeah.
in terms of what it
And
is.
it's a great experience.
And it's not, to both of your points and Mr. J as well. We have a good relationship with ACES. We have a good partnership. We believe in the product. And for the right opportunity, we absolutely will consider participation similar to what we did with the party animals.
Right.
I mean, that was for us a very easy decision to allocate funding at an event development, because we know that 70% of those attendees are from out of town for 3 nights and 10,000 per game. So
And what did we fund that at?
50,000.
Okay. I mean, I'm more comfortable in that, but I think if we could almost split the request, go back and see if we could,
I think that's a great idea.
do we need that in a motion format?
I mean, I think you could make a motion to direct staff to go back and discuss the ACES, the other option.
Well, it's already at 20,000 here. I mean, technically, it might be in 10 and 10, the way that it is written here, right? It's written at 20.
Yes, so I think maybe if the committee agrees is all we're asking them to do is change the amount on the application. And it would come back to staff and
that's
review
what
it
would be.
on Monday.
Okay,
And John, just to make sure you're clear on your question, so the ask was for 25, and then it was unintentionally, the agenda said it at 20, the
Okay.
agenda should have been.
All right, you're right. So I see the application says 25. You're right. Yeah.
So the way we're agendized today, we can only approve up to 20. If you approved it, we bring it back to the board, we bring it for the full amount, but if the direction is to go and
20, so we can just approve it here with the allocation being 10 in cash and 10 in kind.
you can approve it, or you can give direction to Mike to go make sure that the ACES are willing to do that.
Let's give direction.
Okay.
I believe that's the best option.
and see a motion?
Our motion to direct staff to go back and renegotiate or.
Revise the
Revise the-
application request.
Revise the proposal to a 10 and 10, 10,000 cash, 10,000 in kind.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion moves. Okay, yep, we'll move to agenda item F, committee member announcements, reports or updates. I think we're all clear. Comments, any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay,